trillion promise for cuts from
Yes, I think we do expect over time to achieve the $1 trillion.
But what have you found in your time here was the biggest roadblock to getting those cuts? Was it the cabinet, or was it Congress, or something else? What was the biggest roadblock from your work?
It's mostly just a lot of hard work. It's really not any one person or Congress. It's going through really millions of line items and saying just each one of them makes sense or does not make sense. Obviously, at times when you cut expenses, those who are receiving the money, whether they're receiving that money legitimately or not, they do complain. And you're not going to hear someone confessing that they received money inappropriately. Never. They're going to always say that they received money appropriately for an important cause. Naturally, that's what you'd expect. So we just have to. It's just a lot of work going through the vast expenses of the federal government and just really asking questions. What's this money for? Are you sure it's actually being used well? Many times we can't even find anyone who defends it. So for a lot of the expenses, there is actually no defender at all. And then we have to just work through the process of stopping the spending, where there's often literally no defender. Nobody even knows why the money's being spent. It's truly absurd. I mean, we find situations where there are millions of software licenses with 0 people using them. 0. Exactly. This is the quizzical expression. You're like, surely, if there's millions of software licenses, someone should be using them. No, and then we've got to go through the process of saying, okay, look, if no one's using the software, we need to terminate this software license agreement. That's everywhere in the government, by the way.
Mr. Musk, what do you think would be easier, colonizing Mars or making the government efficient?
It's a tough call, but I think colonizing Mars and making life multiplanetary is harder. And as I said, we do expect to achieve over time the $1 trillion of savings. We can't do it in like a few months, but if you say by I think the official end of DOGE, which the president may choose to extend, is the middle of next year. If you say by the middle of next year, with the support of the president and Congress, could we achieve $1 trillion of savings? I think so. We're on track to do so.
Do you have faith that Congress is going to
Go ahead.
Mr. President, you had mentioned earlier in the week that DOGE had become a whipping boy, and as the president mentioned, you went through a lot to go through this process.
Yeah.
Was it worth it for you, and what would you change?
Yes, so what we found was happening was that if there were any cuts anywhere, then people would assume that was done by DOGE. And so we became like essentially the DOGE boogeyman, where if any cut anywhere would be ascribed to DOGE. A friend of mine's daughter, who's at law school at Georgetown, thought that DOGE had cut the Senate, the internships the legal internships for the Senate, and we have nothing to do with that. So if they have been cut, it's not to do with us, just as an example. So, it just became a bit ridiculous where any cut anywhere was somehow DOGE, and including things that made no sense, and we would agree made no sense. There are many things that occur in the government because it's the banal evil of bureaucracy. It's sort of the frankly largely uncaring nature of bureaucracy. It's as the great Milton Friedman said, money is spent most poorly when it is someone else's money being spent on people you don't know, and that's how federal spending is. And then you can't really even blame the individuals because the way the government works is complaint minimization. So when you do when someone within the government tries to stop money being spent, there's usually someone that complains. And then their manager will say, it's not worth the trouble. Just pay it anyway. That happens over and over again.
So was it worth
I think it was an important thing. I think it was a necessary thing, and I think it will have a good effect in the future.
Thank you, President Trump. This week there was a video on board a plane that showed the First Lady of France slapping her husband, Emmanuel Macron. Do you have any world leader to world leader marital advice?
Make sure the door remains closed. That was not good.
Yes.
No, I spoke to him, and he's fine. They're fine. They're two really good people. I know them very well, and I don't know what that was all about, but I know them very well, and they're fine.
I got a little shiner here.
What do you think about
Was
the
that
Democratic
really
Party plan to avoid being swept in every battleground state again by spending $20 million to study how to speak to American men?
Well, you know, they spent 2.8 billion. We spent 1.5. We spent much less. We spent about half of what they spent, and at the end they were $28 million short. They had to be. They spent 2.8 billion. It's a lot, but they couldn't get 28 million at the end, and now they want to spend. I read that they want to spend money to learn how to talk. That's fake. You don't want to be fake. You shouldn't have to hire consultants to say what America needs, because then the consultants should be running the deal, not them. But I read that they want to spend a lot of money in each state. So we won all 7 swing states, 7 out of 7. We won a lot more than that. We won the popular vote. We won everything, and they want to spend money to find out what they did wrong. And I mean, I could tell you what they did wrong. I could tell you every one of their programs. When they say men playing in women's sports, I would say that's not a winner. When they say transgender for everybody, I think that's not a winner. When they say open borders so the entire world population of criminals can pour into our country, I don't think that's a winner. I mean, I just gave them that for free, but I don't know if they'll change their ways. I see them all the time. I see people that I know in Congress, Democrats, they're trying to justify some of the things I just said. You can't justify them. I always hear they're 80-20 issues. I say they're not 80-20, they're 97-3. They might be 99-1. They're not 80-20. They wish they were 80-20. And they're wasting a lot of money if they're going to continue with that nonsense.
And this
Mr.
one
President,
is more
on
of
the
a
big-
page 6 question, but back when you listed The Apprentice, you mentioned once in 2012 that Diddy was a good friend of yours back then. He has since found himself in some very serious legal trouble.
No, it's true.
Would you ever consider pardoning him?
Well, nobody's asked. You had to be the one to ask, Peter, but nobody's asked. But I know people are thinking about it. I know they're thinking about it. I think some people have been very close to asking. First of all, I'd look at what's happening, and I haven't been watching it too closely, although it's certainly getting a lot of coverage. I haven't seen him. I haven't spoken to him in years. He used to really like me a lot, but I think when I ran for politics, that relationship busted up. From what I read, I don't know. He didn't tell me that, but I'd read some little bit nasty statements in the paper all of a sudden. It's different. You become a much different person when you run for politics and you do what's right. I could do other things, and I'm sure he'd like me, and I'm sure other people would like me, but it wouldn't be as good for our country. As we said, our country's doing really well because of what we're doing. So it's not a popularity contest. So, I don't know. I would certainly look at the facts. If I think somebody was mistreated, whether they like me or don't like me, it wouldn't have any impact on me.
Mr. President, on the Big Beautiful Bill, would you like to see the Senate build in some support for your tariffs on the Big Beautiful Bill, or should that be a standalone bill?
I have great support on the tariffs. I was so honored that we got that ridiculous stay lifted, because that would have taken away presidential power. It would have taken away everything that was granted by the founders. It would have been a terrible thing. And it would have, most importantly, left us vulnerable. We have a lot of countries that use tariffs on us and use them viciously, viciously. And if we didn't have the power to use tariffs on them, and instantly, not when you go back to Congress and try and get hundreds of people to agree on something, that would take months to get just one simple proclamation. If we didn't have the power to counteract their powers, you wouldn't have a country left. We have to act fast. We have to be fast and nimble, as they say. And that was a really great moment, I think, yesterday when that stay was lifted. And hopefully now we'll go to court and just win that battle. Because if we don't have the power to do what they're doing to us, we are going to be a great nation no longer.
Quickly, Mr. President, Elon Musk was once idolized by folks on the left in this country before joining your administration. Now he's considered a hero by conservatives. Why do you think this man, what he's done in American life, has been so politicized?
Well, his life has been amazing. I look at so many different things. I look at that rocket being, guided back into position. I've never seen that before. I thought it was a space movie. I thought it was a movie. You look at what he's done in terms of communication. It's been unbelievable. So many different, even tunnels going underground, not having to go through all the process of going, he's got a company that does that. He's got so many different companies. Starlink, as an example, he saved a lot of lives, probably hundreds of lives in North Carolina. I don't even know if you remember, but I called you. They needed Starlink in North Carolina, and I didn't know what the hell Starlink was. I said, what is it? Who owns it? He said, do you know Elon Musk? I said, you happen to know the gentleman. This was before his government stay. And they said, we really need it because North Carolina was literally became an island. There was people had no communication. They had no access to anything, and they were dying. And I called up Elon, and you can't get it because it's so successful. It's very hard to get. And he had so much of it brought over there, and they told me it was unbelievable. It saved a lot of lives. So, he's just done a lot of things. Frankly, I don't think he gets credit for what he's done. But he's a very good person, too.
Mr. Musk.
You know what? If he wasn't a good person, but he did the same things, I'd probably maybe speak differently. He happens to be a really good person who loves the country.
Mr. Musk,
One big, beautiful bill. You had indicated this week that there were some things you didn't like about what had passed in the House. What changes do you want to see the Senate make? And you had also indicated there were things you didn't like about the bill. What would you be suggesting he push senators to change in their version?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll go first. It's an unbelievable bill. It cuts your deficits. It cuts, it's a huge cutting. But there's things I'd like to see maybe cut a little bit more. I'd like to see a bigger cut in taxes. It's going to be the largest tax decrease or cut in the history of our country. I'd like to see it get down to an even lower number. I was shooting for a slightly lower number. I would have liked to have done that. But with all of that being said, when you look at the tax cut and the fact that the original tax cut, which made us so successful, we had the most successful 4 years in the history of our country.